Tom, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the show. Really appreciate it.
Andrew, great to be on with you. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah. So, Tom, you have a fascinating story. You were a middle linebacker, went to Boston College. You were all Big East. You go into the 1993 NFL draft. You end up going undrafted. Then you're kind of out of football for a little bit, but then you get a call in 1995, and Coach Coughlin wants you to come play for the Jags. Can you kind of walk me through that experience and tell me how it affected you?
Yeah, that's great. My first two tries in the NFL, I didn't make it. I was a rookie free agent with the New Orleans Saints in 1993. Learned a lot. Played linebacker with the likes of Sam Mills and Vaughn Johnson, Lamar, Swilling wasn't there anymore, but there was the outside back was there. He was Ricky Jackson, just incredible players. But I did not make that team. I lasted to the end of the training camp, played in 5 games because we actually played a game in Tokyo, Japan, believe it or not. We played Philadelphia in the first game. And then, so in '94, I got a tryout, a minicamp tryout with the Washington Redskins in the summer of '94. After I got cut by the Saints, I moved back to where I grew up in Chicago and moved downtown with my brother and friends and started tending bar. I had my degree, but wasn't ready to get a real job just yet. And so I was doing that. Then I get another chance to try out, which was with the Redskins, and that didn't happen. They didn't end up signing me. So I went back to Chicago, and I was like, all right, I got my old bartending gigs back, and I was like, I gotta move to Boston. This NFL thing's not gonna happen. Use my degree. I used the Alumni Association, which were absolutely incredible. One of the best in the world, Boston College's Alumni Association, and got a job. Moved out there, got a job within probably 4 or 5 weeks. I was going to work for a home healthcare company, selling home healthcare equipment, selling weight room equipment to college and professional sports teams. So a great gig, great little salary, a company car, a little expense account, and getting ready to start that. And I get a call from my old linebacker coach. This is in the September of 1994. I'm 24 years old, and my linebacker coach calls. We got my number through the Alumni Association, and said, "Hey, Coach Coughlin, you got the job, and down in Jacksonville, and he wanted me to give you a call and just see if you're, interested in just coming down for a workout. No guarantee. I'm not offering you a contract, nothing like that. We just want to see what you look like. We don't really know the kind of players we're gonna, get for this team. There's free agency, there's a draft, there's the expansion draft, and then there's guys like you that we are looking at. Would you be willing to come down and just work out for us?" And I immediately said yes. My gut was like, yeah, you got to go for it, So I did. He said, "Well, do you have a place to get in shape?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And he's like, "Are you in shape?" And I said, "Yeah." And I kind of lied a little bit, and I was lifting, but I wasn't running, that kind of thing. But he's like, "All right, well, you got 2 months to get in shape, and we'll see you down here in December. I'll be back in touch with details." So I moved down to New Smyrna Beach, where my parents had lived since 1989, since I was a freshman in Boston College. They'd moved from Chicago, and had 2 months to get in the best shape of my life, which I came pretty close and got in great shape. Lucky for me, last time I saw Coach Coughlin and his staff, I was about 6'1 and a half, 230 pounds, and 2 years later, I'd grown to 6'2 and a quarter, roughly, and about 245 pounds, and got faster, got bigger, got stronger, and just kind of matured that way. And showed up at Bishop Kenny High School on the river, St. John's River. Never knew anything about Jacksonville. Never had been up there. Didn't really even know there was a city up there, to be honest with you. The farthest we would go from New Smyrna was Daytona Beach, with in the heyday of spring break and whatnot. So, we came up and had a good workout, ran a good 40 time. There's about 10 of us on this occasion, and did my whole, routine and impressed enough to where 2 weeks later, Coach Coughlin gave me a 1-year deal, 1-year tryout contract, gave me $5,000 signing bonus, which I thought was huge. Bought a seat. I think it cleared 3,200. I bought an old CJ7 Jeep so I could get back and forth from New Smyrna and Jacksonville. And it was. I tell you, it was my third try, and I was just my whole mentality was, look, this is it. Like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to impress these coaches and make this team. So, I went in. It's funny. I went into training camp, Andrew. I was on the lowest end of the totem pole. I was probably 5th string middle linebacker and probably 5th or 6th string on the punt team, kickoff return, kickoff team, punt return. I mean, I just, I've been out of football, so I was way behind everybody. And it was challenging in the beginning because, the guys knew that the only reason I was there was because of Coughlin. And if I didn't know him, I wouldn't even be there. And they were right. But, over time, I won them over and eventually made that first team of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Very, very unlikely that it was going to happen, but I made it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible story, Tom. Correct me if I'm wrong. Coughlin was also your college coach, correct?
For 2 years, my last 2 years. Yeah, Coach came in. I had 2 years of eligibility remaining. I'd been there for 3. I was redshirted, so I had 5 years of eligibility or 5 years to play 4, and had 2 more full years. And I welcomed them. I was ready for a change. Coach Picknell was great. Our linebacker coach was great, but we weren't winning, and it was very frustrating. And it was frustrating at times not being a full-time starter. But it was a clean slate when Coach Coughlin came in, and I won the job and started for him for 2 full years and had a good run. I still hold a couple. I shouldn't say hold records. I held a record for 19 years. Luke Kuechly beat it in the 20th year for the most tackles in a season.
Gotcha.
So I had a productive career. It was great. I was always a very instinctive player. I could always, read the play very well. I was always around the ball. The thing that I lacked that the NFL thought I lacked was just flat out speed, flat out 40 time. And, to be honest, before that workout down in Jacksonville, I never really ran a great 40 time. I was quick. I could from end to end, tackle to tackle. I filled the hole like anybody else and wasn't afraid to do it. And was a pretty good hitter, but outside of that, running guys downfield, that I just didn't have that in the athletic repertoire. So, but yeah, Coach was there for 2 years. He shook it up. He showed us that the mind is a funny thing, and when your mind tells you to quit, you'll quit, and when it doesn't, you won't. And he was good for us. He really was. So I welcomed him, and I always liked Coach Coughlin. He was a guy who was always fair and honest, consistent. And you had to, look, if you did well, he rewarded you, and if you didn't, he got all over you, and you had to be able to handle that. But I was okay with all of it.
Yeah, and he had an incredible career. I would imagine, as a player, having a coach as both your college and your coach in the pros, that's got to be pretty rare.
Yeah, and I think I don't know how rare it is, but it is. But I think with Coach Coughlin, and I say this a lot about, he was the GM at the time too. He's bringing in the players, and I always say this, when you're drafting or bringing in talent, it's not just the talent; it's the talent that meshes with the coach's style. Because if that coach can't get to him, it's never going to work. So Coach Coughlin brought in guys that he knew he could push. He knew he could be tough on because they were tough. And, he knew that I could, if I was good enough to play, that I'd be a good teammate because I could handle everything that he was trying to accomplish. And, going in, it was funny. I'll never forget one in the spring of 95. We haven't even started the season yet. And, and we're in, we're in like just off season, OTAs, so to speak, and one of the guys trying out, Dexter McManus. I mean, we just got done conditioning. It was hot. Everyone's sweaty. Everyone's tired. We were all bitching and moaning. And he sits down next to me at my locker, and he goes, "Man, you chose to come here?" I was like, "Dude, this is my last shot. I could." And by the way, he was way harder in college. This is nothing. He's like, "You got to be kidding me." I said, No. College was way tougher than what we're going through. But yeah, he was tough. He was tough, and I definitely knowing, he knew what I knew what to expect, and he knew that I could handle it. So it was a nice match as long as I had the athletic ability to make it at the NFL level.
So I want to segue into James Robinson. He, I would say had a pretty similar situation to yours. Not exactly the same, but similar. Him being an undrafted free agent from Illinois State. He comes in. He has an incredible first season, 1,000 yards rushing. What are your thoughts on him?
I think he's fantastic. He's really smooth the way he runs. Very tough guy. And that's the thing about the NFL, where they miss on guys like James Robinson. Because if you knew what he could do, or even the potential, he would have been drafted. He would have been drafted probably, in the higher rounds. Maybe not a first round, although if you could know that he would do what he did last year, maybe towards the middle to the end. But, he was a guy that didn't test well. He didn't run a great 40. And the NFL misses on people like that all the time. They try to put you in a box. Okay, he's a running back. He's got to run this 40. He's got to jump this vertical. He's got to jump this broad jump. We got to look at him in drills. And, sometimes that track speed, if you will, it doesn't show up. But game speed, yeah, you look at James Robinson, plenty fast, plenty quick, plenty tough, plenty strong.
Yeah.
Sees the field really well, catches the ball really well. So I'm happy for James Robinson and any guys like that, because, there is a thin line of guys that never make it. And it's because of that. And let me tell you, I know guys that I played with in college and played against in college that never got a shot at the NFL, and they were good enough to be in the NFL.
Yeah.
But they might have been a little short or a little tiny bit slow or whatever. But they could have got it done just on pure football ability, like James Robinson.
Yeah, it'll be really exciting to see what he can do, in the upcoming season, and really exciting to watch. I want to talk a little bit about your pro career. You're with the Jags from 95 to 99, and
Sure.
Played with a bunch of different linebackers in that linebacking core. Brian Schwartz, Kevin Hardy, Bryce Popp. Who hit the hardest, excluding yourself, out of that group?
Well, me, of course. Listen, you got to add Eddie Robinson, who was a great will linebacker. Brant Boyer, who was a great linebacker for us as well. Later on, Lonnie Martz came. But yeah, Boyer could hit too. He had that. I always told he was shorter. I told you he got instant leverage. You're built in leverage. You don't have to dip to hit anybody like the rest of us do. But yeah, look, I think even Kevin Hardy was a pretty good hitter, but that was, not in a vain way. That was my forte. I could always hit. I was always a good run stopper. Even my early days with Jack McDowell at Boston College, my sophomore year, my first year, I started on short yardage and goal line because I could come up and really whack you one, and that's what it took. So, the negatives in my game, no, I wasn't a good one-on-one pass coverage type guy. But man, I can meet you in the hole, and you better bring it, because I sure was.
So, you guys have played. You played the Steelers, and
oh, yeah.
I wanted to talk about Jerome Bettis. I have watched a lot of film of you tackling him and bringing him down, and he's just a monster of a running back.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was that experience like?
Well, yeah, I played against Jerome at Notre Dame our senior year. He had an ankle injury, so he didn't play that much. But I remember hitting him and like, holy cow, this guy's a load. And he was one of the best. Everyone asks me, well, who's the toughest? I always say the Bus, because the Bus, he would run just as hard in the fourth quarter as he did in the first quarter, no matter how hard you hit him early in the game. Now, not every running back can say that, and I'm not going to name names because that's not fair, but even some of the best that you've heard of, they didn't like getting hit early. And if they got hit early, they didn't bring it the rest of the game. Well, Jerome Bettis brought it every single game. I'll tell you a funny story. We're playing them in 1998. It's a Monday night game at Jacksonville. It's a night game. It might have been Sunday, but I think it was Monday night. And we got them back against their goal line, right? They're coming out. And I was starting at that time. And they ran their famous counter tray, where the guard pulls around and Bettis takes a step and then comes back the other way. And I knew the play. I read it perfectly. I met him in the hole. I smacked him good and stood him up. And when I say smacked him good, my body, felt the brunt of it. Trust me, because it wasn't like when you smacked Bettis, it wasn't like he went backwards. You were just hopeful that you could stalemate him at the least. You know what I mean? Or at the most, I should say. And anyway, so I hit him, and I hit him so hard that my chin strap buckles unbuckled.
Wow.
And I get hit on the side by a defensive lineman, Kelvin Pritchett, who's got an offensive lineman on top of him. So I get turned around. Bettis lands on top of my face. The two linemen land on top of him, and my face mask, the bottom of it, is in my chin, and all I can feel is the weight of these men and Bettis's fat belly, all sweaty. I'm like, God, I'm just praying, please don't break my jaw. Please don't, this, please. I'm not saying that. I'm just, and then anyway, so they get off. I check my jaw. Okay, everything's good. I put the thing back on, and off we go to the next play. But he was a beast. He was a beast. Armani Dawson was a beast. He was so good as a center. He was probably one of the best, if not the best, offensive lineman I ever had to play against. And him leading the way for Jerome Bettis, trust me, that was a tall order to take down when you had to go against those guys, for sure.
Yeah, probably some intense battles. But I want to talk about your book. You wrote a book called "We'll Always Be Pals: The Last Words of a Dying Father and True Hero." What inspired you to write that book?
Well, my father, he died when I was 25 years old. He actually saw me finally make it to the NFL that first year with the Jags, saw my first start against the Chicago Bears of all teams. Coach Coughlin named me a captain. I think I started 4 games that year, and he got to see his youngest son realize a dream. And cancer, he was diagnosed with cancer at the end of November. He died in a month. He died December 31st, 1995. Just would have celebrated his 100th birthday.
Wow.
This past December 31st. Yeah, he was quite the man. So, he was the only grandparent that was not alive. My mother's still alive and my in-laws. And I wanted my children to know about him. So when my first daughter was in my wife's womb, I started writing about him. I just read The Greatest Generation by Tom Brokaw, which tells the story of somebody born in 1920. My father was born in 1920, the oldest of 3. He lived such an incredible life. I mean, not just even early, he had to take a job when he was 12. He was bussing tables at a hotel and going to school and playing football, and was really good at football. And, he's making $5 a week at the hotel. And, his parents, they didn't want him to go to college because there was a Great Depression and they needed his help and yada, yada. So he stayed home and, started playing semi-pro ball, took up boxing.
Wow.
He was a sparring partner of the great 2-ton Tony Galento, who was a beast, who fought Joe Louis back in 1939. My dad was his sparring partner on a regular basis after that fight. He finally makes it to Rutgers on a full ride. And the day after Pearl Harbor, he left it all, walked into the Army Air Corps recruiting office, enlisted as an airman, wanted to be a fighter pilot, knew nothing about planes, but wanted to be a pilot. They made him a bomber pilot. He was so good at it that they wanted to be an instructor. He switched lottery numbers with another airman, and he and his crew got together. They trained for another year and a half, and they flew over to Italy, flew out of Italy 23 times, were shot down on their 23rd mission. My father was the pilot of those missions, and They were all captured except one. Vinny from Philly didn't make the jump. He had a tracer hit his parachute and he fell to the earth. Jeez. And my dad was captured, prisoner of war for 11 months over in Germany. It's amazing any of them made it. And, he just lived a great life. He came home, liberated by General Patton's 3rd Armored Division, and came home a hero, and he was my hero. And he was a great man, and I just had to write about him. It really started just an original story just for my firstborn, so she would know her grandfather and know everything he did for me and for the country and everything. And so I wrote it, and it was actually the 3rd thing I wrote, because we tried to make it a film early on. It was called Back to the Gridiron. It was a full script, and didn't get done, didn't get made. So I eventually wrote the book, but then a new script was written called War and Football, and we're working through it right now on a polish. Peter Facinelli's involved, Nick Loren, a producer and longtime actor's involved, and myself, and we're gonna give it another run. It's all based off my book. It's titled War and Football, and it's just a story about family, and love and persevering and overcoming and never giving up and, doing what's right. And he was all about that. So thanks for mentioning it. I wrote that a long time ago, 12 years ago, but people still tell me, hey, I read your book and it meant so much. It helped me get through something, help me get through a death of a loved one, or not, making a job or getting a job or what have you. It's, it's really just a story of never giving up.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. And, I thank your dad for his service. And I'm really looking forward to...
And same to your parents, Andrew. I know your parents are military as well. So thank you for their service as well.
I appreciate that.
The veterans of our country, they're the best. It's the ultimate sacrifice to leave everything to go fight for our freedom. So I'll always hold our veterans in high regard.
Yep, agreed. And I'm really looking forward to that film. I hope it gets made. So I'll be on the lookout for it. Do you think your dad helped you to kind of push forward and accomplish, all your goals? I mean, you're kind of a Renaissance man. You've been a football player. You're a businessman, radio talk show host. Do you think he really helped you kind of push forward?
Well, look, I think upbringing in this world is everything. And although my upbringing wasn't perfect, it was a very good one. And it was filled with, with just principles of doing it right, of, living this life the best way possible and live it to the fullest and live it with principle. My father used to say all the time, he'd say, you got to have couth, show some couth, which meant manners, which meant coolness, which meant knowing how to handle any situation. You got to have couth in this world. And it's true. And, his and my mother's direction have made me who I am today without question. And, look, life's not easy. I'm an entrepreneur and it can be challenging at times, but you can't give up. You gotta, sometimes look in the mirror really hard and, point the finger right at that person that's staring back at you and say, hey, how can I make this better? How am I going to make this better? And, it's a great way to live. Buffalo Trails, eh? Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that, Andrew. Absolutely. And upbringing again, that's key, and it's my wife and I, we're the same. We teach our girls that, hey, we're here for you. We'll do everything to support you. But at the end of the day, you're the one that's got to do it. You're the one that's got to do the work and be smart and never give up and believe in yourself and love yourself and take care of yourself. So yeah, definitely, that upbringing that I received will remain with me till the day I die.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. I was watching one of your motivational speeches on YouTube, and it was called, the philosophy was called Suck It Up. I love it. I was actually using that yesterday when I was on one of my runs up here in Virginia, freezing my butt off, had that replaying in my head, just suck it up and finish it. Where do you think, where'd you come up with that? Where do you think the genesis was for that kind of
You know,
philosophy.
it's funny. I came up with that a while ago. We had a business around it. That's not why I did it, but we had a business around it, and it didn't. It's funny you say that in the fitness, it works, right? Because you got to suck it up. I run too, and you do. Sometimes you're dead dog tired. Your legs are tired. You're winded. But you do. You got to suck it up and keep going. But it's really just I just wanted to, send a message that, hey, man, we do have to suck it up. You quit pointing the finger, quit passing the buck, quit, not taking responsibility for where you're at in your life. And, I think a lot of people do. They point the finger everywhere else, and they fail to look at themselves and say, no, it's me. I'm the one that's got to change. I'm the one that's got to make it better. It's not up to anybody else. Sure, you're going to have help. Everybody needs support, including me. But at the end of the day, it's the person looking in the mirror that's got to get it done. So that was really the genesis of it all. And I still believe it.
Yeah.
Even though the business really didn't take off, I still believe in that philosophy. And I tell you what, when you're an entrepreneur, when you're working out, when you're teaching at school, when you're whatever you're doing, you got to suck it up and make it great. So I think we all have that ability in us.
Yep. Like, again, can't agree more. I want to talk some Jags with you. Urban Meyer just hired as the head coach, third highest winning percentage in college history. Great coach, but no NFL experience. What are your thoughts on Urban Meyer?
At first I didn't like it. I feel like Shad Khan, our owner, is more about hype than substance. Not that he doesn't have substance, because he does in the college ranks. But, look, I've seen some quotes from his former players. Dallas Baker had an interesting quote. Tim Tebow, of course, had interesting quotes. Joey Bosa, as to why they feel he will succeed. And they make sense. If he can pull it off, the thing about college and pro, it's how do you motivate the player. In college, it's easy, right? So there's stories of, if you played well and did things right on and off the field, you got to eat steak and lobster. And that might be a little bit far-fetched, but you got to eat better food than the guy that wasn't playing well or wasn't trying hard or was blown off class. In college, you could say, hey, look, you either do it my way or I'm sending you home. And those are the worst things that any kid can hear, because you got to go home with your tail between your legs and say, well, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Now, a lot of kids would say, the coach just didn't like me. But the truth, it's the coach loves a kid that tries hard and plays hard and does the right things and has the right attitude. So Dallas Baker says, look, he ran us like an NFL program. It was up to us to do it. And if we did it, he rewarded us. So it'll just be interesting to see how he motivates. And it's not, everyone says, how is he going to motivate someone that makes more money? And that's not it. The guy he really has to motivate are the grunt players like me. The guys, that are 25, 26, 28, with a family, just earning the minimum, but you need this player, right? You need a run stopper. You need a guard.
Yeah.
You need that nose tackle. You need that fullback. They might not be your star players, but they're the glue of your team, because without them, star players don't get to shine. And, how he's going to motivate them is going to be critical. And if he can, great. I'm still a little skeptical, but at the same time, man, give the guy a chance. I hope it works out. I hope he brings back championship football to Jacksonville, because we had it in the 90s. In 96 through 99, we were one of the better teams in the National Football League. Our city was rocking. It was a great time to be a Jaguar and somebody that lived in the city of Jacksonville. So hopefully he can get back to that. I'm pulling for him.
Yeah, I agree. I was a little skeptical at first as well, but I hear some positive things, some talk of a, potential new practice facility. So hoping he steers the ship in the right direction.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
We'll give him a chance anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I want to close out, last question here, about the recent hire of defensive coordinator Joe Collen from, Baltimore Ravens. He was the defensive line coach, and then he was also had kind of a stint with Jack Del Rio at the Jaguars. Yep. What are your thoughts on him?
I met Joe when he was with Del Rio's staff. I know Jack pretty well too. Great guy. And Joe Collen's a great defensive line coach, without question. He's one of the better defensive line coaches in the National Football League. The issue not an issue, but the question, he's never been a coordinator. So what's his defense? What's his style? What's his philosophy? How is he attacking? That type of thing. So it doesn't mean he can't do it. And I'll say the same thing for Joe Collen as I say for Urban Meyer. Open mind, open arms. Let's go. Let's see if we can put together a suffocating defense, because that's what it takes to win this league. But as a D-line coach, he's ultra respected throughout the league, and the players really like him.
Yeah, and I hope we can return back to Jacksonville. But hey, Tom, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man and you're on the road, so I'll let you go, but thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Hey, Andrew, thank you for having me on, man. I really, really enjoyed it.